The Pottery at Lake of the Woods. Joe and I began working with clay 21 years ago. He first participated in classes at Manassas Clay, and I joined in a few sessions later. Before our demo, we want to give you a view of our body of work, which is continuously evolving. Oops. The touchpad is very simple. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we can.
Okay.
Oh, amazing.
Welcome to the Pottery at Lake of the Woods Gallery. By maintaining a display of our pottery, we provide an opportunity for members of the local community to browse and purchase our pots almost anytime. During the COVID pandemic, a caller wanted a vase for a birthday gift. We sent photos with a description and completed the transaction on our front porch following COVID protocol. I have to say there are a few new ideas in pottery. The uniqueness of a pot comes from the hands, the skill, and the creativity of the potter. In addition to firing in our 21-inch diameter electric kiln, a fellow potter, Jennifer in Alexandria, will fire pots for us in her gas kiln. The French butter dish here was fired in our electric kiln. The other 3 pieces were fired in Jennifer's gas kiln. Okay, these 2 trays are composite pieces. The bottoms are slabs, one the roller and the other using a texture mat. The sides were thrown and then attached to the bottoms.
Wow.
A mug is the first project for a beginner where clay parts are joined. Mugs are great to try out new ideas as well as to use up the last pound or so of clay in a bag. When we get the COVID all clear, we have multiple displays from which customers can select special gifts. These melon vases were inspired by the work of Benjamin III, renowned Seagrove, North Carolina potter, whose forefathers settled in the area in the late 1700s to ply their craft and furnish storage jars and other utilitarian wares to early settlers.
Wow.
During Prohibition, this community of potters supplied jugs for the bootleggers. Apparently, they kept track of glass jugs, but did not keep track of the jugs that were ceramic and contaminated with lead. Today, there are more than 100 potters in the community.
Wow.
Joe created the first bowl with the dolphins. We were commissioned to create another similar to the one shown here with the colors of the ocean. Most of our work is functional. However, we have fun with the decorative, such as the planters, the masks, and the fish. The hanging planters were a class project. The instructor was creating some for a friend to hang on the side of the fence surrounding her small Charleston garden. These fish are about 8 inches in diameter. The large 21-inch fish that barely fit in our film sold via the Low Arts online store.
Oh.
We have been assured it has a happy home. Okay, come on. Let's move on to the studio now. Joe's waiting for us. Generally on the first day of class, a first-time pottery student purchases a 25-pound bag of class clay and a pouch of tools. Clays are basically classified by the temperature at which they mature or vitrify. They are earthenware, mid-fire stoneware, and high-fire stoneware. We use commercially produced clay since it's convenient and quality is uniform from one bag to another. Clay shrinks about 12.5% between just thrown and glaze fired. As for those basic tools for the beginner, there's a sponge, wooden rib, potter's thumb, needle tool, wire clay cutter, couple of trimming tools, and a dangerous metal rib, which each instructor would like removed from the pouch. Okay, maybe one reason Joe and I are drawn to pottery making is because it's just, we followed a structured process. First thing is to wedge a chunk of clay.
I have a chunk of clay right here handy. And wedging is kind of like kneading clay, kneading bread. So you wedge it, move it, and it accomplishes a lot of things. Once it gets the molecules moving in the clay, also it kind of homogenizes the moisture throughout the clay, and it gets air bubbles out. So there's a lot of good things that happen with clay. After you get it wedged, I'll set it aside. You place a bat on the wheel. As you put your ball of clay, and I've got, after you wedge it, you make it into a ball. I'm playing Martha Stewart on you. I have a ball here ready to go. And you get it about in the middle of the wheel, and on the middle of the bat. And I have a pedal down here I can press to make the wheel go around. And I use my finger to check and make sure that the ball of clay is about in the middle. And if it touches in one place and not the other, I know it's not in the middle. So I kind of work it toward the middle a little bit more. That's about right. This part doesn't have to be real well done. After you get it mostly centered, you pound it on, but you don't want it to come off. I've had clay fly off the wheel over to another potter. I've had other potters clay fly off and hit one of my pots and just smashed it. So you got to make sure the clay is well attached, because there's a lot of pressure put on it while you're in the next step called centering. So now I've got it attached. Speed it up just a little bit. I get my hands wet. I get them wet to make them slide on the clay, and I mash down to make sure it's well attached again. Just a part of the attachment. So now I've got it attached, and the next step is getting the clay centered. And just like your life, you want your clay real well centered, and we're going to cone up the clay into a nice tall cone. You can remember the movie Ghost. This was something that they did in the movie. I think Demi Moore was a potter in that movie, and she did centering the clay, coning it up. Once you get it coned up, you have to mash it back down. Get off a little bit of extra clay. And you notice I keep getting my hands wet so that they'll slide real easy on the clay. And I use the bottom part of my hand and the heel of my hand to bring it back down to a nice centered piece of clay. Okay, notice how nice and centered that is now. Next part is called opening.
But you can put your finger on it and see that it really doesn't bounce.
Right.
Now that it's centered.
Right. So start right in the middle and start with one or two fingers. You need to make sure this is in the middle. If you don't have a good centered piece of clay and you don't start in the middle with opening it up, you'll get one side that's much thicker than the other. And it'll rise up taller, it'll get all out of shape, it'll be hard to control. So a lot of this to make it controllable. But we open it and we push a hole all the way down to where we're about a ½ inch from the bottom, about a ½ inch thick down here in the bottom, so a ½ inch above that. And then we open it out. and I opened it out to be about 3/4 of how big around it was when I first centered it. And after it's opened, we cone it back up and in, and make sure that the top edge is well compressed, and that it's in so we can keep control of this top edge. Now I'm going to be using my sponge to get it wet on the inside and outside. I'll be doing the first pull. I need to slow it down a little bit. All through this process, I'll be, from the first speeds, I'll be slowing down as I go through it, because each step needs a little bit slower speed. So this is the first pull. You notice I'm getting it taller. And I'm picking up clay at the bottom and pulling it toward the top. Oops. Get it wet. Need to slow it down. Once again, pull the clay up toward the top. The reason they call this process pulling, you actually pull clay up. Now I'm going to compress the top edge, make sure it's nice and solid. I'm going to compress the bottom and get the water out of the bottom. Keep drying and compressing the bottom so it won't crack.
How large is your ball of clay here?
This ball of clay was about 6 pounds. Make one last pull on it, get it wet on the outside again, wet on the inside, so my hands slide. I keep my hands kind of muddy. They said if you play with fire, you're going to get burned. If you play with mud, you're going to get muddy. Okay, so this is the last pull. I've got nice tall sides. If you notice, I started out making a cylinder. Almost every piece of pottery that you throw on the wheel starts out as a cylinder. No matter if you're making a vase or making a coffee mug or making a bowl like I'm making, it starts out as a cylinder. All right, next thing I'm going to do is called shaping. I'm going to shape the bowl, this piece of the cylinder into a bowl. I have what's called a wooden rib. It's a large one. It's not like the little one we get in classes. As you work with pottery, your tools change some. You use some of the very basic ones, but you change the other ones. I need a large rib for this. Right, so I'm going to press out and use my other hand with the sponge in it to help support this as I'm shaping it out. Once again, compress the edge. And now, as I press that out, I made a ridge inside. I'm going to press this right on top of that ridge and open it out some more. Now I'll go back up to the top and open that out wider. And compress it again. We'll get the inside wet. Then my rib will slide. We'll go down to where the ridge is now and press it out. Now I've got one little ridge in the bottom, which I'm going to take out now. come back now and get out the irregularities. I have another tool here, is a piece of chamois, and I put it on a float so I don't lose it in my water. That helps me shape up this top edge, firm it up. Take my sponge, dry all the inside out, compress it. So this is the bowl. It's been I also keep a towel very handy so I can wipe my hands off every now and then. And we wash a lot of towels. The next step is altering what I've made here. We alter to make things unique, make them ours. I like taking the top edge of the bowl and fluting it. And to do that, I use an X-Acto knife, and I usually mark exactly where I want it. But this one, and usually I wait 2 or 3 days before I do this to let the bowl set up. But I'm going to demonstrate what I do with this bowl. I take the knife, the X-Acto knife, and I cut an arc in it. Then I take what I've cut here, maybe, and I take it to the outside and reattach it on the outside to make it have a fluted edge on it.
Can you turn it around to the,
Do what?
never mind.
Yeah, then turn it and do the next spot. And it reattached that one. I'll do one more. Now I go all the way around the bowl doing this. Usually I do between 7 and 9 cuts. And then after I get it done, all the way around, make sure everything's well attached again. You can spend a lot of time working on decorating a bowl and a rim. And I take my sponge, and this is what I'm going to scallop out the edges to make it have some type of additional shape to it. Scallop that out, then I'll go to the next one, and we'll go all the way around a bowl this way. So that's the getting it scalloped and getting it shaped to where it be a scalloped bowl.
Pick it up a little higher.
Up a little bit higher. Okay, lift it up. How's that?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Then after that, the bowl has to sit for a few days and get to leather hard, and that's it feels almost like a piece of leather. It's got some spring to it, but not a lot. Set that one out of the way. I happen to have a bowl sitting here to the side that I made a few days ago that I'm going to demonstrate trimming the bottom of it. After it's set up for a few days, we want to make the bottom with a nice foot, as we call it, on it for it to sit on. So I have a bowl that I've got plastic around it to keep the top edge from drying, but letting the bottom be exposed. This is a larger bowl made with about 10 pounds of clay. Okay, and pre-centered it on this bat that it's sitting on. Okay, that's pretty good. And I put pieces of clay around it to keep it in place so it won't move. And then use one.
Keep going.
Okay, so I use my trimming tool to trim the, start trimming the clay off, and I'll decide how big around I want the foot to be. And just trim right straight down into the clay. Take the clay out of the way as I'm working on it. So, trimming does a lot of things. One, it gives it a nice, can improve the shape some. You can take off a lot of clay to reduce the weight. Gives you a way of making the bowl much lighter. And there's usually a lot of clay around the bottom edge as you're throwing it, because you can't pull it all up to the top and out. So there's a lot of clay here that can be removed when the clay starts getting a little bit firmer. As you notice, this clay is not as wet, and it's a little bit more pliable than it was when it was real wet. More like a piece of leather. Was I supposed to go into anything else? Okay, so that's the process of getting a ball of clay made into a bowl. After it's been trimmed and allowed to dry, it gets to a place where we call it bone dry. Let me set this one back out of the way so I can pick up other ones. This is the bowl I made about 2 weeks ago, where I've trimmed the scallop. Oh, down the lower. Okay, where I've fluted the edges and scalloped them, and it's been sitting around. It's just drying. They're pretty brittle in this state, so they have to be handled with care at this time. This bowl is one that I made a while back, and it's already been through what's called bisque firing. And that's fired to about 1965 degrees. And it's kind of has almost a ting to it. And it's much harder, much harder. And it's, we can take it and dip it into the glaze now and put a layer of glaze over it. All of our glazes are water-based. I mix them up, and they're all in this orange buckets here behind me. And the final thing is, after we put it in our kiln, or our friend's gas kiln, it's fired. Now this is one that I had scalloped, and probably made it about 3 years ago. And it's a large scallop bowl that's been glaze fired, got a much better ring to it. And I think that's about it, isn't it?
I think so.
Any questions or anything? Maybe Jen can turn the mics back on, or people can turn them on and ask questions.
Sure. I'll take the spotlight off and go back to gallery view so I can see everybody. Okay, well, wow, that looks like magic to me when I watch you do that. It's like, how do you make it go up and down? I do remember Ghost and Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore's very sensual scene, I'd say. So, I mean, from start to finish, how long does it take? I mean, if you were working at top speed to finish a piece, how long is it from the day you throw it to the day you hand it over to someone?
Probably 3-4 weeks. Elaine says 2 weeks, but a large bowl takes much longer to dry. You have to we wrap them in plastic to make them dry slowly, because if the rim dries too fast, it'll get hard, and then the inside and the bottom dry later, they'll crack loose from the outside. So they've got to be made dry evenly. And smaller pieces can be done in a week, but big pieces take a long time. And the main thing is just drying, letting them dry slowly.
Suzanne, did you have a question? Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were unmuted.
No, I was just going to say that that's the most clear explanation. I've watched different people do this over the decades that I've ever seen of throwing. Thank you, Joe. That was great.
Well, thank you.
That was great. Are you allowing people to come into your studio at this time?
Elaine?
If push comes to shove, yes, because we do have a back door that comes into the great room where we have our displays set up.
And then I had another question too about now are your glazes your own mixes, or is there something that has inspired you for these glazes, or are they just standard glazes that you purchase?
Most of the glazes I mix. The ones for the gas kiln that our friend fires, they're her glazes, so I don't mix those. I like this glaze because of the yellow and in the kiln, it has the brown edges on it. It's just a fun glaze to work with. Our glazes, I like them because I mix them up, and Elaine and I just determine what colors we want to try. We will test a color, maybe kind of light and a little bit darker and a little bit darker to see which one looks the best on a piece of pottery. We have test tiles where we have tested things, keep track of what works and what doesn't work.
We have bought a couple of commercial glazes that are not necessarily our go-to glazes, but some of them do look very nice.
What is the glaze made of?
Silica, an opacifier, flux,
Yes.
and then colorant are the main components.
Okay. BJ, did you have a question?
I do. I was wondering, over the years, what kind of signature style have you found yourself going into or developing?
We don't necessarily have a signature style. We do get one particular pottery magazine, and there's lots of artwork on them. We don't do artwork. I don't do artwork. I really have a problem with hand-eye coordination. I can't tell how far a brush is from a surface. But I would say if you looked at our pottery, it's from the time we started until now, you would see changes in some aspects and no changes in others, because it's mainly about the pot and the glaze.
There's a number of pieces where Elaine may throw the pot and then I do the decoration on it. Like we make the tea lights. Did you have tea lights in the tea lights that Elaine showed in the early part of it? She threw those and I did all the carving on them. So that's something we both enjoy doing because we work on them together.
That's what I have, a lantern
Right.
with the little cutouts.
Right.
Dragonfly.
Dragonflies.
Right. And then sometimes Elaine will throw a bowl and then I'll skull up the edges for it. So
until COVID, I continued to go to class in Manassas, and it was an advanced group. It was just fun to be with the others there. We shared lots of ideas, and over the years, the instructor, who's one of the owners of the business, there were very few new demos that she had. We've seen just about all of them, but she would take one idea and has seen ways to improve that over the different sessions that we've been in.
Also, like the scallop bowls and stuff, she showed us how to do one type of scallop bowls, and we went to a pottery display in North Carolina, in Southport, North Carolina, and I saw a different scalloping. And so this is not either one of those. It's something that kind of in between, but my own style to it.
Great. Yeah, I have multiple Freeland pieces here in my house, and I've given as gifts, including several fish that I've given, and some of the little hearts that are on our Facebook page, which were well received by the recipients, and my favorite, which is the lantern with.
I have to say,
showing her food.
the lantern, both Joe and I worked on, and it is one of our favorite pieces too.
Yeah, great. Well, this was wonderful, as I knew it would be. So thank you for doing this for us.
You do custom pieces.
We do. Christy, if she's still on line, she can attest to that. And
She
as I
is not
said-
right now.
Okay.
Doesn't it tell the story that was why we did it for her?
We did some of the custom bowls with the dolphins.
Oh,
So
mhm.
occasionally we do custom pieces.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you doing that. I know you did a lot of preparation for it, and it was obvious.